So we'll call the Facilities Committee meeting February 19th, 2020 to order. Let me lead us in an invocation, please. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have to serve the citizens of Glynn County. We just ask you to grant us wisdom and understanding as we look at various issues and problems today, and help us to always make sure that we try to glorify you in everything we say and do. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. There's no public comment period. The mainland smoke testing project.
I was just going up front to see if the speaker is here yet, and if he's not, perhaps we could go ahead to the approval section.
Let's move ahead while we're waiting to find out about that to the approval section. First thing is the minutes from the January 15th.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes as submitted.
I second. All in favor? Motion carries 2-0. Commissioner Copeland's going to be late. He had a flat tire.
And please make sure your microphone's on.
Next item is the unsolicited proposal application upgrade pump station 2038 West Point Plantation. This was presented to us before, right, Todd?
That's correct, sir.
This was brought before the previous Facilities Committee meeting, and the committee requested we come back with information as far as the current status of the pump station and the build-out schedule from the West Point Plantation Group.
Correct. So last facilities, Mr. Burrow said, last Facilities Committee, this was presented. It's basically proposing an upgrade of the existing pump station to accommodate the full build-out of around 275 more homes out there at West Point Plantation. Commissioners asked at the last facilities for staff to go back and look at existing condition of the pump station that's out there. It's pump station 2038. Evaluate its capacity related to their proposed upgrades. Currently, we call it in the green, where we have a surplus of capacity on that pump station as it stands right now. It's about a 200 gallon per minute pump station. Full build out proposed for West Point. This is not considering any other build out within the area. That area, it does have some pockets of land that could be redeveloped. They have to go through rezoning and all that. It'd be speculation to figure what was other potential growth. But as far as vacant lots out there, it's very limited. There's not many left in that area. So this analysis was just looking at the proposed build out of West Point. Would take the station to about 300 gallons a minute. If they're build out of 20 to 25 lots a year that's laid out in their unsolicited proposal application, it's about a 5-year time frame until we would be looking at an upgrade of the pump station. In other words, right now we wouldn't be proposing an upgrade to the pump station.
If we did an upgrade, let's say we went through the exercise, the proposer brings to us a solution, and then we'd go from 200 gallons a minute to 300 gallons a minute. It seems like that would be an issue for us operationally, and particularly since they don't need that for 5 years. Is that a reasonable assumption?
Correct, sir. We would, an upgrade like that, we would prefer to have the either impending, very near demand, close by. You can have operational issues if you oversize the pump station. Run times are cut down to practically nothing. You have long residence times. That's about a 8,000, 9,000 linear foot, 6-inch force main as it is to where it comes down to the roundabout there at Frederica and Lawrence Road. So there's another about 1,500 feet to pump station 2032 right there at South Harrington. So it's a very long force main as it is. Increase the residence time upstream. It's just going to be a longer residence time in the force main.
Will that create an odor issue?
Residence time can result in some issues with odors. It can develop the conditions to create odor issues. Not to say that would happen, but
I'm thinking about the number of starts on the motor and the starters that could potentially become a maintenance increased cost for us, perhaps early failure on equipment. Would that be reasonable to expect based on our experience on any basins that would be similar?
As you say, the more starts you have on the motors, the inrush currents, that's what's hard on a motor. Motors like to run, or they like to run.
How old is this pump station right now?
It's in the 90s.
Station was put in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's got two pumps, and those pumps have a certain life, and so why should we even want to replace them right now as long as they're doing good and we got plenty of capacity in them at the present time?
Certainly.
The request from the West Point group was to go ahead and get it locked in for all of the build-out. And I think that's their purpose here, is to go ahead and secure flow and capacity for the full 275 lot build-out. This was brought to us by them. They understand that as today, there's not a need for this, but for the full build-out. So they were going ahead and trying to get their pre-planning done. And that's why they brought forth this proposal, so that they could go ahead and get moving, because they do intend to build the entire subdivision out.
They're in a development, not building business, as I understand. Or
To the best of my knowledge, yes, sir.
I mean, based on what they've done so far, they're selling lots. While their sales forecast may suggest an absorption of 25 a year, I think that's pretty aggressive. And I would further suggest that actual construction would be far less than they're projecting. So the reality is, I think we would be significantly oversized. Mr. Chairman, what I would like to do at this point is I move that we defer this request, this unsolicited proposal, and have a conference with the parties to help them understand the concerns that we have operationally about upgrading a station. So I offer that in the form of a motion.
I'll second. Now, one thing, this proposal, is this for them just providing a study?
Yes, sir. What this request is in the unsolicited proposal process is you submit an application, which has to be voted on by the commission, which is what the request here is. They would then, following the approval of the application, submit an engineering report outlining the proposed upgrades and the cost. It would be reviewed by staff, and then the way we have typically done it, the credit for TAPs would be equivalent to the amount of dollars spent on the construction of the project. So this is not in any way requiring us to do the project. This is just this first step to them to provide that engineering report.
Yeah, and let me follow on with a question, Andrew. While I understand there's no commitment of capital on our part, a couple of concerns there. One is the parties proposing are going to spend money for the application, just to generate the application and approval of the app, and for your study of it.
There's a $5,000 fee to
$5,000.
us, plus whatever he would be paying his consultant to perform the
Right.
engineering work.
And then their estimate is based on today's dollars, for example, and presumably they would project out based on need when those upgrades would have to be made.
Yes, sir.
And then we have to decide from there, would we accept that or not from that study? The other concern is because the project really wouldn't be needed for quite some time, is projecting out that cost perhaps 5 years into the future as to what it would be. And I think it would limit us in some way to make any kind of commitment that we would accept such a proposal that's forecasted 5 years out.
That's certainly a rational argument.
In particular, since we're only talking about replacing pumps, which is a 6-month time schedule at the most.
Likely, yes, unless there would be in electrical upgrades, but even that would probably not extend it very much.
And we were talking before about the force main. It would not require a force main upgrade. 6-inch will carry the 300
Right.
easily.
So really, it's just pumps and associated electrical equipment to support upgraded horsepower, if you will. That would be needed at sometime in the future, perhaps as far out as 5 years or more. In my view, I don't think that's a good use of this customer's resources to come up with that cost of the study and a $5,000 application fee to us, and then nothing's going to be done.
And you can tell them we'll be glad to, as a facilities committee, we'll be glad to meet with them if they want to come to our meetings.
Yes, sir. I'm
Facilities
sure,
meeting.
I'm sure they'll be happy to attend the next meeting if they have any further questions.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries 2-0.
Thank you.
Next item is a 2020 capital projects plan.
All right, yes, sir. At the retreat at the first week of February that we had off-site, this was presented in a 6-year form, but this project plan before you now is just for this calendar year's worth of projects. Previously, what we've brought forth is individual projects for consideration of scope and budget, and while it has been effective, the way we do our SPLOS projects, we get a allocation for all those projects currently, and then we work through those projects, and this is a similar approach here. So what I presented here is a list of projects for funding for this year as well as scope. You will see on the memo that we have a variety of projects spending money both on the water and sewer systems on the mainland and on St. Simons. So these will be targeted funds for our areas of greatest need in consideration of both the condition as well as staff's time to manage these projects. As you're aware, we have large SPLOS projects that are underway right now. Those will be with us mostly for the duration of this calendar year, as well as the impending upgrades on Academy Creek, which will get kicked off this year as well. So you will see a large number of projects, most of which are not of significant cost, but are our needs in our system. On the second page, the main project we're looking at for this year would be lift station SCADA upgrades. We are currently running two separate SCADA systems on our lift stations. We have the existing DFS SCADA system as well as the VT SCADA that we have transferred some newer stations to, as well as some failed DFS stations. That causes some communication issues, and the DFS failures are occurring at a rapid rate to the point where we have over a dozen currently that are not working. The lift station SCADA project here would be for us to install the upgraded monitoring equipment and communication protocols on those that would probably get 130 to 140 stations, which would be the vast majority of the ones that need it. We do have some small stations that wouldn't have it at that point, but we could handle those in-house. The debt service for the work at Academy Creek and the sewer rehab work on the GFA loan would be coming out of R&R. If you remember, when we first started discussing that, we made a promise to the ratepayers that our rates would not go up as a result of taking that GFA loan out. So that money is earmarked out of this R&R plan. We have some potential budget overruns on the Magnolia Park project. We're going to be bidding that out separately from the city to see what kind of pricing we get back, but have an allocation for that. We have a couple of elevated storage tanks that we have more than a couple, but a couple that will be painted this year if this gets approved. That's the Prince Street tank and the Demery Road tank. Both those tanks need a sandblasting and recoating of those tanks. The Arnold Road pump station 2002 by Crab Daddies, we're requesting money to do a force main replacement there. That force main runs down Arnold Road and is 60s vintage, cast iron force main. We've had a couple of failures out there in recent years. Given the high traffic that comes through there, that's certainly something we would like to avoid.
How long is that force main?
1,500 feet, something like that.
It gets to Demery, and then it hangs right and goes down to the East
Right.
Beach intersection where the roundabout's going. County roundabout is, so it's a couple thousand feet there.
So, when you do this, you're gonna have to close Arnold Street?
The goal would be to put it in the shoulder and get it out of the road altogether. So we could do that without having to bypass the station, except for when we're making connections as well. It'll ease construction. There were, at one point, plans drawn, and we'll have to figure out exactly who did those and maybe get them dusted off to actually put in a PVC force main down the shoulder of Arnold Road.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about is that they're gonna start at the roundabout there at Demery and East Beach. And I think Arnold Road is gonna be part of the detour.
Mhm.
So we have to time what we're gonna do.
Absolutely.
What they're gonna do.
Absolutely. We will hopefully not cause further traffic delays as part of that East Beach roundabout project. So we will stage these appropriately for that. Bay Street, the section of Bay Street from essentially the Pate building down to the port has some existing 12-inch cast iron water line that is heavily tuberculated, and this would be to replace that with PVC. This would be done trenchlessly because, as you are probably aware, they have recently done paving down there. And that is a DOT road at this point, and they are less than enthused about the options of open cutting that road, even if it hadn't just been paved, so that would likely be done trenchlessly.
How do we know it's tuberculated?
Staff has had sections cut out and seen the tuberculation. Lift Station 2023 is a pump station at Kings Way that is in need of rehab. That would be new pumps and a short section of force main that needs to be upsized.
That's one right by the entrance to the lodge over there on the side.
This one's a little bit further down.
It's up by Island Club.
Just before Island Club and all that. It's
It's
right
that
there on the corner,
Okay.
one right there on the left.
on the left-hand side, right against the lagoon there.
The next two projects would be to do engineering for future expansion projects. We'll get to a discussion later in our project report about the SPLOST funding that we have, and there's some capital improvement funds that are tied into one of those SPLOST projects that may be freed up that we can do some construction, but we're hoping to get the engineering done on the actual water and sewer expansions to ARCO, as well as the community road area. Community Road Key Circle Drive is a commercial corridor that is not currently on our sewer system. There has been expressed interest there. We have $250,000 in here for the first step of the meter changeout project. That would be to run a pilot program. We did have all of our meter interviews last week, so we are closing in on a decision there. We're calling references and setting up some site visits to go visit some other utilities that have recently done this. Galvanized replacements, we have a lot of 2-inch galvanized pipe. They are a large cause of the boil water advisories that we have, and this project would be to have in-house labor remove galvanized pipe when it is found and replaced to a tune of a max of $250,000 a year, and the hope would be to continually fund that amount until we get through the galvanized sections. Brockington subdivision has collapsed pipe in it right now that due to failed taps, and we would like to get that rehabbed. And then pump station 4118, 4119 pump upgrades are some worn out pumps up on Highway 99 that need replacing. And then PRVs, pressure relief valves on St. Simon's Island and the North Mainland will allow better operation of our actual elevated storage tank. The St. Simon Island PRV would be installed, as well as a altitude valve on the Demery Road tank that will allow the Demery Road tank to actually operate hydraulically. Right now, it cannot operate hydraulically because of the height differences between it and the Oglethorpe tank on the north end of the island. So installing a PRV will actually create 2 pressure zones that would allow that tank to function properly. There would be minor differences in the pressure in the north to south end of the island, and in the event there was a major pressure loss on one side or the other, that valve would actuate open to allow flow to be pumped either direction. Same thing in the North Mainland. This would be to separate the area north of the interstate from the canal crossing area there. Right now, a lot of the water that is at wells north of 95 currently comes back across to canal crossing. And then the Tillman water line replacement, there's a section of 8-inch water main between sections of pipe that have been replaced in recent years with new PVC lines by in-house staff. This would be to connect that loop. That we've got quotes on in-house staff doing that, and that would be the funding for that. And then the only one I skipped there would be we're at the time where we need to be looking at our master plan again with a focus on what is going on in the north part of the county as far as expansion. Given all of the building that we have in that area, we want to get a better handle on that, and we can take our existing plan and get it updated with the more recent population projections. That plan is 5 years old now, so it's about time to start doing that again. So all in all, you're looking at about $7.5 million of total funding. request for the year. Naturally, these projects would not all kick off at the same time, but they would be staged as necessary to Commissioner Elliott's points, try to limit traffic situations as well as based off of available funding and cash flows. But these would all this money is available currently in the R&R and the SIF funds right now, and certainly there will be more funds added to that as we move forward. So this would not put us in any financial straits, and this would knock a lot of very high-priority projects off our list.
Would all of these projects be finished this year?
All of them likely would not be finished. The vast majority of them should. Certainly, the meter replacement project is not going to be a single-year project, but the pilot phase would be finished this year. And then, depending on timing with the traffic on the Arnold Road Force Main and potentially the Bay Street water improvements, that might change some timing there. But the rest of them, there should be no problems having them complete this year.
Okay. And this is, as I look at this list, it's pretty much aligned with our discussion when we did our little planning retreat.
That's correct. Minor changes to that, moved up the engineering portion of those expansion projects to this year, shifted some dollar values around within the budgets for the R&R projects, but all in all, pretty close to what was presented 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think directionally, we're very aligned in this regard. And, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I move that Facilities Committee recommend approval of the attached 2020 capital projects plan to the full commission.
I'll second that. I've got a comment, though, about the Magnolia overruns.
Yes, sir.
We don't know that's going to happen.
We don't know that that project's going to happen right now, depending on what the new bid price would be once we bid that out.
So we're going to bid it out separately.
We're going to try to bid that out separately. With the way it's done with the joint project with the city, the bulk of that work is paving, which limits the amount of bidders we can get because of lack of paving contractors. So we think we can probably get better pricing bidding the water work out separately.
Are we having to prepare a separate spec book and everything for that?
We can take out sections from what they have already done. EMC, we may have to give them a little bit of funding to get that done, but it should be relatively minor to separate that out.
What's the city going to be doing in the meantime? Are they just holding off starting the work on the project?
Mr. Klein can correct me if this is incorrect. My understanding from speaking with the city engineer of this was not going to be started until after L Street got finished anyway, or L Street was going to be prioritized, which would give us some time to get in and start getting out ahead of them if we get this bid out. Is that your recollection?
Let me check on the timing of as far as if they were gonna postpone Magnolia. I was thinking they were gonna, one of the bidders, their lowest responsive bidder is actually some contractor for L Street, so they were trying to discuss the timing.
Right.
Specifically for the Magnolia project on the water upgrades and replacement, what would be the duration of that to be expected just for our part of the utility work?
If it was done separately,
Yeah. Is that a 4-month, 5-month project?
I would say probably 9 months.
yeah, I would say 6 to 9 months.
That's what I would say, 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months. But if we had a separate contractor in there and could get out ahead of the paving and storm water work that needed to be done, we would in no way impede the city's progress on that SPLOST project.
But this way we'll have pipeline contractors bidding it rather than paving contractors.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's not a lot of paving contractors in this area, and since that's the bulk of the work, that limits the amount of bids you get back.
Now, what's going to happen if all the projects we got this year underway come in over budget, and we have to use some of this money for it? Because we don't have, we're taking bids on a lot of projects right now.
We are taking bid on a lot of projects right now. Certainly, there's a chance some of them can come in over budget. This money, the $6.89 million in the R&R funding, is currently in the R&R as uncommitted funds, and we will be transferring the balance of, this year's budget was $6.3 million, and we transfer 1/12 of that each year. So up till July, we'll be transferring, I think it's right at $400,000 a month over into that, or $500,000 a month over into that, that will help make up any potential shortfalls, although we've been fortunate recently with some bids we've got back that have been promising for us, so hopefully that trend will continue.
So directionally, this is aligned with our current R&R fund balance and what we project we'll be collecting in the next year.
That's correct.
And then if we, once we get to the individual projects, as those are going to come back for a second bite at the apple, if you will, for facilities and finance, is that if we have some of them that go beyond our forecasted cost, then we'll have an opportunity to review our priority list.
That's correct. Each individual contract would certainly come back to the commission for review.
So worst case is if things expanded 5% or 10% for all of them, which is highly unlikely, frankly, the bottom one or two of the priorities would just simply slip into the next calendar year.
That's absolutely correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, these are not in a particular order, are they?
Those are in dollar value order, not necessarily in priority order.
So I think we need to assign a time value too on when we're going to start each one of these.
Yes, sir. We can do that.
This would be the perfect list to move forward with our project management discipline to assigning them that way. And then as we improve our execution, some of them move up on the execution calendar, and where we have some surprises on bid
Right.
values, they'll slip down on the execution calendar.
Can we have it where, if we approve this list today, what we'd like to see is the proposed schedule, which one's going to be first and everything?
Yes, sir.
At the next facilities meeting.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And hopefully one or two will be started by then, or getting started.
Yes, sir. One of them, if approved today, may be awarded for contract at the next facilities meeting.
Good.
There's a motion, second, all in favor? Motion carries.
Just as a brief note, spoke with our asset management manager who's been coordinating our speaker for this afternoon. Had some wires crossed, and he will be here at 3 o'clock. So we may be shifting some times around here, but he will be here at 3.
Okay, the next thing is a system report card. Asset scorecards.
Yes, sir. What we've done, last year, we did this exercise, and the commission requested we do it again. We had multiple members of our staff that scored the sections of which they have direct knowledge of how the systems are currently functioning. There's 2 of them here. One of them is the current scorecard, and one of them, because we know we have a lot of work going on out in the construction world and the work we're moving forward with as staff, the second page is upon completion of existing projects, which do not include anything we just discussed. So these scores would continue to improve along the way. Now you see some variety of scores across the different scorers, but all in all, currently we're having a lot of, for lack of a better term, using the scoring of a school B-level systems out there, which, I mean, given the age of our system, that's not, certainly not inappropriate. You can see that the area which received the lowest scores on the current system is the Academy Creek collection system as well as the wastewater plant. However, we also know that we are fixing to do a major wastewater plant rehab job there, and we have the smoke testing report that we'll get today will identify areas where we can target repairs on the collection system. So if you flip back to the second page, you'll see that those 2 numbers go up quite a bit. Those 2 letter grades go up a pretty decent amount with the amount of existing work we have going on, as well as some of the other numbers increased. So I think what this shows from the staff's perspective is that the work that we're doing in the project world is making improvements to our system. Staff is understanding the work that we're doing from the larger picture and understanding how this is going to benefit them, and the continued progress will continue to see these scores increase. I think, I didn't pull last year's scorecard, but I believe these scores are a decent amount higher than what they were last year at this time. After doing the smoke testing on the island and the mainland, having a better understanding of what's going on out there, as well as a lot of the work that our planning construction group has done on understanding our capacity situation has certainly improved a lot of these scores just from our internal knowledge.
I don't know how you figured up the combined. How'd you determine the combined?
Well, what I did was do the old school scoring grade. A B minus was an 82, a C was a 75, and got an actual average and did letters out the other side.
The good news is it's improving.
It's improving, and while we would love all of our systems to be A pluses, that's probably not realistic, and certainly if everything is a passing grade, we're doing okay.
Do you track emergency repair calls?
We do. I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head, but we have data on all the calls that we
I'd
get.
kind of like to, I like a scoring system, but I'd like to see by a system how many emergency calls in a given period we have.
Certainly, we can get that information.
That would tell me, that would help me understand why something is a B. If it doesn't have a lot of emergency calls, that would tell me that everything's in pretty good shape.
Correct, absolutely.
Second item is the timing of capital fee payments.
Yes, sir. We've been discussing as staff with some of the local building community about the timing of capital fee payments currently, and this was instituted a few years back. If you're putting in a new subdivision, the payment of capital fees is due at the time of construction plan approval. So if you're putting in a 100-lot subdivision, you would be having to pay, there's no handout here, sorry. You'd be having to pay for all 100 capital improvement fees at one time. Now, for large developers, that may not be a tremendous issue, but for smaller groups, that messes with their cash flow to the amount where they're having to come back and do multiple phases along the way and pay for 5 at a time, and it just slows the whole process down. After speaking with some members of the building community, their request was to pay for these as they came up. Well, we started looking at it. The reason this was instituted in the first place was because we didn't think we had any capacity anywhere, so we were trying to make it all start up front. After doing our capacity analysis and understanding our capacity situation much better, we feel like we have sufficient capacity and a sufficient tracking mechanism where we can actually release that requirement of all being paid at capital fee, at construction plan. Certainly, we can pay for all of they will all have to be paid before building starts. So before a house is built and a building permit is approved, capital fees would have to be paid. But that can certainly help the cash flow for some of our construction groups. The other thing this will require is a change to the rate resolution, because currently the rate resolution does state that it will be, capital fees are due at the time of construction plan approval. So we'll have to make an amendment to that. But also, we're working with Glynn County right now about getting a plat note put on that states that capacity is not guaranteed until the payment of capital fees. We've worked with community development, and they are on board with that. We've sent them some mocked language to look at that, and the attorneys are under review, but that plat note will be added prior to this process going into effect.
So what you're doing is that once their preliminary plats are approved, that does not guarantee capacity.
There will be no guaranteeing of capacity until the capital improvement fees are paid. However, we will be tracking all of that and keeping up with our system to make sure that's not going to be a
That
problem.
was the big issue back
Right.
then, was there was no movement by the county on that.
We have exponentially, in my opinion, improved our tracking from both the city, the county and us on those platting processes. We have a much better understanding of what's actually going on out there, and we feel comfortable with this move, provided we get that plat note on there.
Well, that may become a sticking point at the county, I don't know.
I think we need,
certainly- go ahead,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was going to offer is that we should probably work really close with that county staff so that it doesn't become an issue for that developer, builder, et cetera, at one of the planning commissions.
Yeah.
I've seen where some of their commissioners have some concerns when there's not a, quote, guarantee
Right.
of services available. And even if it's planned and designed, and there's a construction schedule, some of them, I would just say their comfort level is such that they won't approve a project until they hear the word that is guaranteed at that moment when they're going to rule on it.
Sure.
So perhaps there's some, something we can do with the county staff to help them, I guess, get some sort of working understanding among their separate commissions that look at these plans.
Plat approvals by the Island Planning Commission and the Mainland Planning Commission years ago was one in which the developer, or whoever was doing the plat, felt that he had a guarantee of capacity. And that's gonna, I think it's a good move, but I just think there may be some pushback.
I agree. That's why we need to help the county understand what we're trying to do, that we're trying to help our community grow as it can grow.
Absolutely.
It
And
would help.
like I said, we've had communications with community development staff over at the county and expressed the desire to do this. They're on board with this, and we certainly will work with them as far as what steps in the process they need prior to submission to the planning commissions. Any way we can help that process, we'll help facilitate whenever possible.
If this is done, is it going to change anything as it relates to unsolicited proposals?
No, sir, because if you have a pump station and you're trying to put a 200 lot subdivision on it and it's just not there, we still will have to do this unsolicited proposal process likely if their timing is not where we need it to be. So, there's still gonna be a review for capacity at the time the development comes before us, but just it's the timing of the payment that comes up. So that from the unsolicited proposal perspective, instead of getting the credit at construction plan phase, you get the credit at building permit phase. So it just changes the timing of the credit.
So we still have the requirement that before the building permit is released, tap fees have to be paid.
That's the goal in this, yes, sir.
Okay, I think it'll work that way.
I
really
agree.
well.
Yeah. We still have the, what I'm trying to say, the checkpoints
Yeah.
that something can't get too far out in front because they have to pay the fee before they get the permit. But during the development phase, they don't have to pay that fee.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, that we will certainly review everything. Our inspectors will be there as this is being installed. So the entire construction process is the same way. It's just when that payment is due.
Okay, now, I think, now that I understand a little bit more of the approach we're taking here, that this is really a good way to change.
And the rate resolution, we'll have to approve that. Do we
Well,
do that on the anniversary of our
Well, it'll
fiscal
be
year?
changed in July anyway,
Right.
but we can change the rate.
Yeah, if we get the plat note added prior to July, all that takes is a vote of the commission to change that rate resolution. As long, the usage rates, that has to go to public notice if there's any change. But just a note like that is just a vote by the commission.
Yeah. But
Okay.
people won't be using our capacity
Right.
to deny a
Right.
developer.
Okay, that's good.
Next item, Academy Creek rehab alternatives.
Yes, sir. We, excuse me. We are currently in the process of finalizing a $15 million GFO loan for work in the Academy Creek wastewater plant as well as work in the sewer collection system, mostly on the mainland. With that being said, $10 million of that money was originally allocated for Academy Creek, with $5 million going to sewer rehab. Certainly, we understood going into this project that we were probably going to ask for more than what the 10 million would fund, but we wanted to get some numbers back. So these numbers are estimates from our consulting engineer, Goodwin Mills Kaywood. You can see it's broken into two sections on the actual costs. The first section there is more inside the plant work, and then the second thing, we're having additive alternates in this project. One, to rehab the existing operations building, and to add a second dryer, sludge dryer at that facility. Those additive alternates, with a contingency on those, it adds about $8.5 million to the project. But the top part there, those are the things that we would like to have done inside the plant, minus there's one line item, the admin lab building, you'll see is on there twice. That $965,000 is the electrical work. That would be done by somebody different than the actual construction contractor there. If we're gonna have an electrical contractor coming and doing massive electrical reworks at the plant, they would probably do both of them at the same time. So, total project funding at the bottom would be $22 million if we did everything that we would like to do. The original GFA funding, $10 million. If you recall, we had two SPLOST 5 transfers for this work. One of them was from the city for odor control, and the other one was from the county for the engineering and design work. So total funding would be $11.6 million. We've expended just shy of $400,000 to date on the engineering, and we have encumbrances remaining of just over $800,000. Most of that is engineering and construction administration work. So the remaining funding from the original 11.6 is 10.4 million. So we're certainly 12 million short of the full project scope. However, if we just take out the additive alternates, we drop that number down to 12.6 million, which still puts us outside of the existing funding. But I highlighted here the encumbrances to date because the encumbrances to date include construction and administration time for completion of the entire project. So that money would likely not all be expended if we take things out of the project. This third option here is to take out the sludge offloading area. One of the things we were looking at doing was adding a live bottom bin so we could take the sludge from Dunbar Creek and from Southport and actually dispose of it at Academy Creek and run it through the dryer. That would help lower the cost at the landfill. However, looking at the total cost of that, that's a $1.25 million installation there, and the savings on that we would get from drying it would probably make that a 10 to 15 year payback, because certainly we would save at the landfill, but we'd be using more natural gas to dry the additional sludge. So given the payback on that's not as rapid as what we would like, if we drop that portion out of the project, you get down to, with a 15% contingency included, 10.9 million, which puts us about 500,000 over the remaining budget. However, the encumbrances should reduce if we don't do the full project, and in all likelihood, we would not use that full contingency amount. So once we get this, the bid finalized, the project finalized, I would suggest bidding it all out, see what numbers we get back, and putting the sludge offloading facility as a third additive alternate, and bidding the rest of it as one, and then having the three alternates, knowing that those likely would not be included in the project.
Okay, question on the full project. Was the original project to include a dryer too?
We had discussed it. It wasn't something that we...
That in the engineering services and the agreement for them to design a new dryer?
We had them do an evaluation of our existing dryer, as well as give us a scope on what would take to put a new dryer in. So they're not designing a new dryer at this point.
So we will not be taking bids with a new dryer as an alternate?
Right. Right now, we're not doing that, no,
So
sir.
that's not even in there anyway then?
Right,
really,
yes, sir, but
basically.
that's just something that we had discussed previously.
Now, the administration lab building, they are doing the engineering work for that.
Yes, sir, they're doing the engineering architecture on that, yes, sir.
So the total engineering fee, which includes that 844, does not really include anything on as it relates to the dryer.
There was a minor amount for the dryer study, yes, sir.
That's already been spent.
Yes, sir.
Now, will they be providing us something showing where the recommended dryer should go?
They've got some conceptual things, yes, sir.
Because we need to have an idea of what we're gonna do with that overall building.
Yes, sir. We're in the process of emptying out the old composting bays now, some of the old stuff that's in there, going through that. Once we get that done, we're gonna start knocking down the old composting rows and open that building up a little more.
Well, after we hear from the presentation about the rehab, we'll know about
Yes, sir.
some of that. And basically, I feel like with all the other projects we got, we need to limit the amount of money we spend at Cannon Creek to $10 million. So we got $5 million for rehab.
Right.
And then we need to make sure that, if you look at the big ticket items, let's see. Do all these numbers have contingencies in them, you think, Andrew?
No, sir, there's an overall contingency at the bottom. I think they're probably a little conservative, honestly, coming from the consultant. Most consultants like to be a little conservative, so if it comes in a little under, they look like heroes. So I think there's probably some conservatism in there. We did look at what the cost to savings would be for potentially only putting in one filter instead of two. That looks like it'd probably only save us about $200,000. $200,000 certainly is not an insignificant amount of money, but for a project of this scope, I feel like it's best to just go ahead and include that in here.
Okay, the item over on the far right is really where we're headed, in my
No,
view.
most likely, yes, sir.
And, while we may put out for bid the sludge processing is, as a separate item, as an alternative.
Yes, sir.
And then if it comes back more competitive than we might expect, then we can make a decision at that point that, oh, okay, we're gonna add that on. Or if it's lined up with this estimate, then it's a deferred project, given the payback.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot going on out there, and I agree with you, Chairman, is we probably should draw a circle around the scope and keep it there.
With the, we'll have the prices for some of these, and if we wanted to apply for another GFA loan for the following year or something, it's gonna be a 2-year construction period anyway.
Yes, sir, you're looking at least 18 months either way, so.
Have we prioritized the capital plan that you presented and the needs of Academy Creek to see if maybe some of our own money can meet some of the things we need?
Well, I think looking at the far right area, if we can get the things in the far right done, those things that we took out would be nice to have, but they would be, they're not impacting the actual performance of the plant. And I think that's the important part. The rest of these here, which we'll get to the wastewater report in a minute, the plant is operating in permit, but there's some maintenance issues and things of that nature that are ongoing out there that if we got the rest of this done would eliminate a vast majority of those maintenance needs that we have out there right now. So,
I think where we are with this is, we've got a good plan on the far right.
yes, sir.
And it's very much aligned with the funding and our capability to execute. Would we like to do more of the sludge processing on site? Yes, that's a good thing to do, but the payback doesn't support it. It's better than a nice to do. It's something that we would do, but financially it doesn't make good business sense at this point, given this estimate.
Well, I will say, when we started this project, we were paying one price for sludge hauling, and now we're paying a much different price, and that sort of changes your payback
That's right.
substantially.
Right. Yeah, under the old plan, it probably would have been a good financial play, but we've already improved that in another way.
Yes, sir.
So, I feel good about what we're doing here, and because that is a significant project, that managing the scope smaller than bigger, I think it's going to be better for us.
Explain the SCADA system and clarify our baffles to us, Andrew.
Yes, sir. The SCADA system that we currently have out there is an old clear SCADA system. It's essentially only monitoring a couple of things out in the plant. There's no control out there. This money would do two things. One, it would allow us to put some more instrumentation out there on some of our vital processes that we can actually maintain some of those processes remotely, as well as get better data off of it, but also there'll be a fiber loop put around the entire plant so that we can bring more of those online with smaller projects down the road. So there'll be handholds every 500 foot or so where we can always come in and splice in more things into that fiber network later. That'll give us an additional resiliency in a storm event because there'll be active fiber there instead of having to rely on any sort of Wi-Fi signals or anything like that to send all that information back. So this will be to put the fiber backbone, change over to VT SCADA, which is where we're moving with the lift stations and the water production facilities, and to put active monitoring on more of our processes. They'll clarify our baffles. That's to put in density baffles to make sure that we're not getting any short circuiting of our clarifiers and improve the performance. We've talked about in the past, those are very shallow clarifiers for what you would see today. And those baffles will help make those more efficient.
We have a new permit, those can require ammonia reduction.
Yes, sir.
And SCADA should help that.
It should. It give us better control over the processes that will help
So
that.
we'll be monitoring the DO probes in the aeration basins too.
And likely relocating the existing probes to give us better control over the system.
I thought when we were talking before that the clarifier baffles was going to just be, we need to think about maybe putting a couple of these things as deductive alternates also, or something, so we can take them off from the contract.
Yes, sir.
Because we don't want it to be in a lump sum price and then all of a sudden have to negotiate a price with the contractor.
Yes, sir. We can certainly do that.
Those, it might be, we might only want to work one or two and actually see if it's really benefiting, because we got how many clarifiers.
We got 6 clarifiers, so yes, sir.
So if we put them on one as a pilot,
Certainly we could do
see
that.
if it would be of help.
But certainly with inside the $10 million budget, we'll get the odor control taken care of. We'll add the filters, which will improve the water quality. And getting the screening done will make maintenance much easier out there because pumps don't get stopped up and stuff. So I think the bulk of the issues we have out there would be taken care of well under the $10 million limit.
Okay.
Andrew, I came in late. Where did the numbers come from?
Those numbers are from our consultant, Goodman Mills Kaywood. They're the design engineer on the project. So those are their numbers from the 70% design plans.
And could they not refine these numbers to a 10% contingency?
Yes, sir. And when we get to the 100% mark, that contingency number should come down. They should have a better understanding of where the numbers are. These are from the 70% drawings. Yes, sir. The 100% drawings are due first week of April. So just to give you a time frame on when we could expect that.
Contingency appears a little high.
Sure.
And if you had a 10% contingency, you'd bring the shortfall in the last alternative almost to zero.
Almost a zero, yes, sir.
And we also said is that number on the encumbrances would likely not be that full amount by
'Cause-
not doing some of the other scope.
Right, because that's got a lot of construction administration money by that group. So if that construction time is shortened, then certainly that money wouldn't be expended.
So directionally, we're headed to that number and closer to zero.
And once we take bids, we'd probably reduce the contingency to 5% for doing construction for changes or something like that. So we make sure we don't have enough. But like the general requirements, we don't know really how that's broken out, do we?
I can get you that data. I just didn't want to send you 45 line items today. But they do have that, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Next item is the water pollution control plant flows report.
Yes, sir. Our report looks about half finished again because we just started a new year. So these are the first numbers from January 2020, so we dropped the 2018 numbers off. Flow at Academy Creek was 9 million gallons. We had a wet end of December, 1st of January, then it dried up a little bit. So the numbers the first part of the month were much higher than the latter part, but certainly you see the reduction in the flow there from the previous month. Influent concentration stayed reasonably stable, and then certainly had high-quality effluent going out well within permit on all of those limits, and we were over 93% removal on TSS and BOD, and with the installation of filters, that number should increase to closer to 98% removal on TSS moving forward. You can see our sludge going to the landfill has stabilized a little bit. The dryer's been operating, cooperating with us a little better, so we've been able to maintain a consistent flow of the sludge going out, so that helps stabilize our cash flow as well at the plant there. But you'll notice we took off 2018, but the only numbers on there that are out of whack is the one last year, which was due to some uncalibrated lab equipment that caused some errors. So that was a permit violation because we got the number, but it was not actually a true number. So that plant is being operated very effectively out there right now, especially considering some of the maintenance problems that they're dealing with. So staff's doing a very good job there.
The water meter manual, is that all the water that we meter there?
That's all the potable. What that doesn't include the reuse water that we have internal. Moving over to Dunbar, flow did decrease from the previous month naturally as we had considerable amount less rain, but starting to drop back down again. The influent concentrations are stabilizing for us, and then the effluent is wonderful. This plant does have filters on it, and you can see the kind of removal we get at that facility with those filters on the back end of the plant. So plant being well operated there, you see no violations on that at all. So Dunbar Creek being operated very effectively by our wastewater treatment staff. And then down at Southport, flow is still a little higher than what we had typically expected to see down there, so we're still doing some investigations to determine if maybe we've got a new hole that has developed, but the plant is handling the increased flow just fine, doing very well on the treatment processes there, and 97% removal of BOD at that facility. You see a little bit lower TSS removal simply because the TSS coming in is much lower, so the more you can take out, the higher your percentage tends to get. So plants are being operated very effectively, though the staff's doing a wonderful job in that at this time.
One question. Explain why the pH drops in the Academy Creek plant and it does not drop at the other two plants.
Typically, the pH drops when you, the wastewater treatment processes for removing BOD and ammonia consume alkalinity. Typically, the pH is going to drop when your alkalinity decreases too much during that. Alkalinity is the buffering capacity of the water. So without having the alkalinity numbers in front of me, my suspicion would be the alkalinity probably dropped a little more there than it did at the other facilities, and that caused that decrease.
Are we adding alkalinity at the other two plants?
No, sir, we are not. But depends.
Maybe if we start adding some alkalinity at Academy Creek, we'd get better ammonia reduction.
We
too.
most likely would, yes, sir. Most likely would.
I think it'd be interesting to chart that and see if that's been going on for a long time.
We'll certainly look at that for you, yes, sir.
Okay, what do you want the pH to be?
6 is the limit, so as long as it's above 6.
But as it reduces, when it gets below 7, you start reducing the
Right.
amount of ammonia you can remove.
Oh.
And see, the other two plants actually have better ammonia removal, but the pH is not dropping. If Academy Creek is dropping, then the ammonia removal is not as good. I don't know if that's because of Panova coming in.
Could be their discharges, a little more on the acidic side than what, certainly anything we're going to get at the other two plants.
Project report.
Yes, sir. Per our normal here, we'll go down and I'll skip some for Mr. Klein, let him handle the reins there. Ridgewood, construction is starting this week. They've started relocating some equipment out there on that facility. So our contractor, Southern Civil, is out there as we speak, moving along on that.
Can we make this a little bit bigger print next time and maybe have it on 2 sheets?
We can, yes, sir. We'll make sure that occurs next time, yes, sir. On the North Mainland SPLOST project, the lining portion of that work has been completed. So all the pipes are lined there. They're finishing up the manholes now, but all of the 30-inch pipe has been lined that needed to be lined. Phase 3, we have pre-bids Friday for the force main and pump station improvements, and Mr. Klein will discuss that a little more in a few minutes. 4003, we're finalizing the documents for that. We thought we were about to bid that project out, looked at the plans and had some adjustments we needed to make there, so they're working through some of those adjustments now. The Canal Road Glencoe project, the water main loop, the section down Canal Road will be bid out as part of the SPLOST project and paid for out of the funds allocated for that. It's about a $300,000 portion of that work will be bid out, but when we have a contractor coming down canal, we'll go ahead and get them to drop the water line in while they're doing the sewer line instead of having to dig twice there.
When's that gonna be bid?
The water line portion is in the work for the force main, and those bids are due back on March 17th.
Okay.
Magnolia, we discussed earlier, will likely be bidding the water portion out separately. We've got to get those together and get those bid soon so that we can get that moving. L Street, I'll leave to Mr. Klein. You're welcome. Easy this time. Good, good. Pump Station 4021 is out for bid right now on the rehab of that. Those bids are due back March the 10th, so assuming those bids come back under budget, we should have a recommendation for contract at our next facilities meeting. We just talked about the rehab work at Academy Creek. Altama and CPALM CIPP, the contractor that's just finished up the lining work on the SPLOST project, is doing that project. They will be mobilizing to CPALM's very early in March. We are currently scheduling a information meeting out at CPALM's, given the fact that we're going to be in there doing a lot of work and maybe having to disrupt some traffic, but we'll be having that in the next couple of weeks. The mainland smoke testing is complete at this point. We will be getting a report on that sometime today. And then Academy Creek roof repair, that job has been bid out and awarded, and we had a pre-con last week on that, and they will be starting March the 17th, I believe, on that. And Demery East Beach, we got the approved amount sent over to Glynn County. The MOU has been signed off on, so the county is ready to go on that. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Klein to discuss 99 and the SPLOST project phase 3, and then L Street and the 4105 project.
Okay, yeah, State Road 99, so it's going well. They're about a third of the way done with getting the new water line in the ground there. Proceeding nicely. As far as North Mainland projects, like Mr. Burris said, got the pre-bid coming up this Friday for both projects. It's going to be an all-day event. We expect a good crowd. We'll be shuttling them to the pump stations, and then we're going to ride out to the force main, ride the route there as well. Show them everything we can about that project. And any particular questions about North Mainland, or have you entertained those?
Can you discuss
kind of
how much is
alternates?
left in the SPLOST budget there?
Yeah, what kind of alternates are we gonna have on this?
So we have a base bid, which is for the original design, which is equivalent of an 18-inch force main down Heritage Boulevard, meeting up with the existing 20-inch, and then a 20-inch from that point to the discharge location at 4036. I guess about midway through the design, we're always on the lookout for ways we can save cost, and so we look at materials, and one of the ways we had some communication with fusible PVC vendor. So pipe-wise, we have HDP, which is polyethylene type pipe, it's the black pipe you typically see. And then we had PVC pipe, which is the normal pipe, but they both can be drilled, they both can be fused together. There's different methodologies, different certifications involved to do between the different materials. But nonetheless, we got some communication that fusible PVC is actually coming in a little bit lower in cost, unit cost, than HDPE at this time. So we asked our engineer of record to include that, using that material as an alternate. So hopefully we'll get some good response in the bidding. One thing to note with HDPE, it's a thicker pipe, thicker wall pipe. So for a given diameter between HDPE and PVC, you typically have to upsize HDPE to get an equivalent inside. That's what counts, the inside area of your pipe. So a little bit of subtle differences there, but they do make a difference potentially. The third alternate that we looked at for that was a 12-inch force main, incorporated a 12-inch force main down Heritage Boulevard in lieu of the 18-inch force main. So we were asked to take a look at that, and that is also included as a bid alternate.
Now, what about the directional drilling?
Directional drilling, so as it is designed now, the majority of the project is directional drill. There is a good bit in the bid tabs. You can see of open cut as well, where that's, the engineer found that feasible. With the drilling, the majority, the longest reaches of the drilling is down Heritage Boulevard. There's some areas we can't get away from it down at the end of Canal, connecting to the existing 20-inch, and routing down across Old Jessup and around the Altamont Canal area. Directional drilling is really about the only methodology that is feasible to do in those areas.
The pumps, would any of the pipe differences cause changes in the pumps?
Certainly, pipe, if you were talking about materials or diameters.
Diameters?
Certainly. It certainly does affect. So we're connected to existing 4110 pump station off of Shell Road and Heritage Boulevard. And absolutely, depending on the diameter of the pipe we connect to that pump station, it does have a significant effect on the pumping rate available on that pump station. So we'll, we have those alternates in there. We'll go make a call once we get the pricing in and see which direction or we'd like to go with that.
Well, we'll see the bids, then we can evaluate.
That's exactly right.
Well, the good thing is, you know, we have a little over $4 million left uncommitted of SPOS funds in that project. 3.2 of the capital improvement funds was allocated to that. It appears we're likely going to have a deductive change order on the existing Phase 2 project that will free up some capital funds there, some SPOS funds there. And we may have some savings on the 4003 project when it is bid that will allow us to transfer those funds over to the other SPOS projects. So that a little over $4 million that's left in that account may be increased with some savings on some other portions of the work. So we may not have to use as much or any of the capital improvement fees, depending on what the bids come back with the alternates that we've got set up in there.
Along Harry Driggers, there's a lot of places we could open cut rather than directional bore.
There are.
And I'm concerned when we're directional bore and it's 30 and 40 feet deep like they got it shown, because that's like a main artery going through there. If you drive down Harry Driggers, a lot of it's just grass where the line's gonna be.
A lot of it is.
So, I mean, I think they ought to be taking bids on open cut, comparing with the directional drilling in some of those locations.
We can certainly incorporate that. We could do that as an addendum.
No, we could do that as an addendum. Likely would have to postpone the bid date to include that, but certainly we could
When's
add.
the bid date?
Bid date currently is the 17th of March.
I mean, it's pretty easy just to make an addendum, open cut, So you got its price for open cut versus directional drilling.
Right, but given the
For certain
depths,
locations.
yeah, given the depths you've got there, we'll have to likely get redrawn the plans that don't include them.
Where I was looking at them, we don't have any utilities or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll change the construction plans a little bit with fittings and different types of things and where you pop out, adding a few ARVs, that type of thing. But it depends on how many sections that we add as open cut in lieu of long pulls. So I would expect the engineer to have to do some redesign on the plans themselves. So we'll have to talk about that. They'll be here Friday, and we can talk about that with.
Might you consider submitting the addendum, but just asking the bidders to offer that as an alternate?
I'm sure it will be discussed heavily at the pre-bid, because
Yeah.
that's certainly something that we'll get into at that point.
Because what that does is signal to your bidding pool that if you get an alternate and your numbers are remarkably lower, considering open trench versus directional for, you know, whether it's 1,000 or 3,000 feet or something, that's a pretty good number that can turn someone from mediocre bid to a very competitive bid.
Absolutely,
Well, in directional drilling, you limit the amount of contractors too.
it does.
And most contractors have to sub out that anyway. And if you open cut, you got a bunch of contractors who can do that work.
Yeah, why did, the design engineer not include open cut?
In their opinion, because there's a limited number of connections along the way that are required, if you drill it, you can do it this, speed is one thing, you can do it much more quickly typically, less disturbance above ground, traffic control associated like that. One of the biggest costs is mobilizing a drilling rig to begin with. Once they're there, they become more competitive on their linear foot price. So we really had a lot of discussions with the engineer on this topic, and it was their opinion of the way it is and the way it's bid, it will primarily be, the prime will be a directional driller probably, which many of them do have crews and also do the typical open cut construction as well. But
There's sections that could be open cut, certainly. There's also sections of wetlands that we're gonna have to drill.
there is.
So,
there is. One thing to consider is when you transition from open cut, which is typically 3 to 4 feet of depth buried, to a drilled section, there's a transition that has to happen. There's fittings involved, work involved with that. And one thing with force mains is you have to be careful, or at least design for, to accommodate for your high points. So if you, every time you come up to access to join an open cut versus a drilled section, it creates a high point essentially, it can, which results in an air release valve, different assets that they put in there at that point. But certainly can be done. You asked the question why they designed it this way. It was their opinion. It was the cleanest way to do it. So, but they say they're getting some cost-effective pricing on drilling. And
if we took the prices both ways, we'd have a apples to apples to take a look at.
yeah, so we're certainly happy to do.
Well, I just don't want us to do anything that would cause the line not to be very efficient at what it's supposed to do.
The methodology of installation shouldn't impact that at all.
Okay.
All right. Good questions. Move along to resurface, L Street. I don't want to skip one there. Very brief report. We're done with our water in phase 1. We're waiting for phase 2 to be done.
When's that gonna happen?
End of March, I think, is when they're proposing to be done, yeah, around the end of March. So, Georgia Asphalt Producers, if you drive down there, if you drive down Martin Luther King Boulevard, you look to your right, you'll see a lot of curbing going in. They got the base down. They're making tracks. They're making good progress. But I think they'll be doing pretty well if they finish by the end of March. And we'll be able to move on. Now, the good thing about do want to go ahead and open up the city, it being their project. That's why they are still going to complete that phase one first, get it open to traffic, get back open to traffic, before they move to phase two and close down that next section of Elster Hills. So we're happily waiting for.
So phase two is open to traffic right now?
The phase two, yes, sir. Phase two routing section, it is open to traffic right now.
Okay.
All right. Resurface in Yellow Bluff Creek, Seaboard they've hit a couple things on that project that I think have stretched a little bit longer, but they're looking like they're gonna complete here soon. They're telling us by the end of the month, but we'll see. But the only thing with that was some adjustment of our existing manholes and valves and things like that. Yeah, and paving. We're not doing any of the work ourselves. We just funded the work through DOT's contractor. We should see that one drop off the list here next month too. 4105 and reroute in CIPP project. So we have Secure Robert Civil Engineering. They were given a design contract for that work. We did receive their first draft of a engineering report proposal. Staff's given them comments and red lines and feedback. Sent it back to them, and we'll wait to see a revision. So that's it's an upgrade to 4105 on Cape Road, and it's also a future design for a future planned force main upgrade up there, and then a reroute to the Crispin Boulevard discharge point, as well as a large amount of good amount of CIPP lining around the overpass there at exit 36 in that pump station 36 basin.
When are we gonna be able to bid that project? It's been going on a long time.
It has been going a long time. We're working with the engineer to get everything together on there. But,
Is this affecting Bergen Woods some and everything too?
not right now, it's not. Bergen Woods is still going through some on-site permit approvals. There's another component of this project, which is force main upgrade up there on Spur 25. That's completely separate. It's an unsolicited proposal. That was moving on. We're ready. Their same engineer, Robert Civil, is doing that for their client and us as an unsolicited proposal. They're in the process of putting the bid documents together. So it's already been through EPD, got EPD approval back. Now we're putting the bid documents together. We'll go through our procurement office to bid that publicly. So that piece is going well. Is it holding back Bergen Woods? No, sir. No, right. So, and 4105, the upgrade of this project is to accommodate future growth, including trade winds, portion of trade winds, safety complex, and some other things up there. Right now, it's not holding any other projects up.
Can we start having a column on here that says when we estimate the completion date's gonna be on these projects? Because we keep hearing the same thing, that everything's fine, but we don't have a date, I don't think. And we need to be stressing a date.
This has,
Did you get, the?
yeah, you got the project
Okay.
completion.
There's a lot of colors on there that my eyes like, helps my eye, but anyway, that helps. We got that broken down in engineering, advertising, the contract admin, the proposed construction. Is that?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. But we will, we'll work, do everything we can to assist, our engineer there to get that one done. Let's see, Coastal Club Apartments, that's another unsolicited proposal that's in motion. You probably see a lot of, they're vertical on practically every building out there now. You see a lot of activity going on. It's gone a little south of Chick-fil-A, off the spur. You can see it through the fence there too. This is a force main and 2 pump station upgrade on Old Cypress Mill. And that has, we did get comments back, sent it back to the engineer of record. They're working on getting those designs finalized. And again, they'll put together the bid documents and we'll bid that through public procurement here at BGJWSC. Bergen Woods also, we talked about it. And Sea Palms East Waterline Rehab, I don't really have anything to report on that as far as.
Right.
That's to spend some money that was left. I thought that was lost, wasn't it?
That was $5. We've got a couple of sections of pipe that need to be increased in size internal, and then We're getting some pricing on that right now, and then any remaining funds will be used to improve the connections out on Frederica to increase volumes and pressures in the Sea Palms neighborhood.
And the last one you don't see on here, but it'll be on the next one, is project 2010, that's Oak Grove Island Force Main, which is, if you look down under unsolicited proposals, it's listed in there. They are moving forward, or we're seeing some movement there in the permitting office at Glynn County, with their residential development that's going on in Oak Grove Island. And that is a force main improvement all the way, it'll route through Oak Grove Island, give those residents capacity to town if they need to, and then an upgrade of our pump station there at Hermitage Island. We hope to see more detail coming soon on that. But that is, Robert Silver's doing the design work on that, so we look to see some form of engineering draft in here shortly. And that's it. Unless there's any other questions.
Can we talk about the Gantt chart?
Yes, sir.
I was just trying to understand it. It looks like engineering pretty much finished on just about everything, except for Academy Creek. Then you have the advertisement phase, and I guess that you've got a lot of advertising going on right now.
We do.
It's kind of like the python that swallowed the rat.
It's working its way through, yes, sir.
You've got all this advertising going on, and I suppose with the advertising, we have bidders who are preparing bids at this point. They're working away, and
That's
they're
correct.
calling in and they're asking questions.
Oh, yes, they ask
Somebody's
lots of
building all
questions.
those. So there's a manpower surge for someone in the building.
One of them had, 85 questions that we had to answer?
And you're dealing with that pretty well.
So far, yes, sir.
So far, so good.
We've got a good team that's, yeah, we do. Got a good knowledge base here to answer this
Then you're gonna jump into contract administration. I'm guessing what that means is reviewing the contract, selecting the successful vendor, and awarding the contract, bringing the contracts. The contracts have to come before
That's correct. It's got to come before the board.
getting the board to approve those, so the board can be expecting approvals of all of these contracts at the first April meeting, maybe?
There's
something like that?
a chance that, not 100% guaranteed, but there's a chance that 2 or 3 of them will be on the March facilities meeting and finance meeting for approval, depending
That's
on how the bids come back.
Looks like you got 6 or 7 that will be under consideration all at the same time.
Within the next
essentially.
couple of months, yes, sir.
Yeah, to be finished up by the end of April. So how's that working with the team? I mean, are you gonna be doing overtime for that, or is it, you got enough people to do that, and handle it? How's it gonna work?
It's going to be an interesting year for us, I'll say. It'll be a very busy year, very exciting year. We'll get a lot of stuff done. So far, we're keeping up with it. Before you got here, we talked about the 2020 project plan. A lot of the things that are on there will be a little less staff time intensive to handle because we know we've got a lot of stuff going on right now. So we're keeping that in mind with new stuff that's coming up, knowing we got a lot of construction projects that'll be starting in the next 2 to 3 months. So right now, we're keeping up with it, and we're considering that for our projects for the next year as well.
So these 6 or 7 projects that will be reviewed, the bids will be reviewed, they'll be graded. The successful vendor, there'll be some back and forth going on. The successful vendor will be selected, and then you'll make a recommendation. You've got the same 4 or 5 people doing all of those at the same time? or-
Right now, yes, sir.
Okay. It's a pretty big,
Pretty good glut.
it's a pretty big
Right there.
responsibility you're laying on.
It is a big responsibility, but these projects are ones that needed to get done, and they kind of got jammed up at one point here, but They're certainly of different lengths of construction. Some of them are much shorter projects, and some of them will be with us for the next 12 to 18 months. So, but in the end of the day, all these projects are going to be great benefits to us. So while we'll be putting in a lot of hours, that's what we're here for. So we'll make sure it gets done.
A lot of them, the engineering firm that we contracted with is
Yes.
helping on it.
As far as the construction oversight, all of the engineering contracts have their construction oversight teams coming in.
So then as we move down into construction, and this lump is passing through the python, all of a sudden we have in, 1st of May, it looks like, all of these projects kicking off.
Yes, sir.
So from a resource perspective and from field support, people out there watching the job, making notes, looking at what the contractor's doing, authorizing his changes, all those sorts of things. You have all that lined up, ready to go, and the right manpower you need?
We have, all those contracts for engineering have the engineering inspectors from the consultant being here for all major installation and connections, and we have currently 4 inspectors on staff. We have a available inspector position if anyone would like to.
We have an opening for next commissioner's inspector, don't we?
Yeah, we could have, we have a great opportunity for those that would like to, we can get you an application today, if you'd like to fill that position for us, so. But yes, our inspectors don't necessarily sit with the contractor the entire time, so they'll be moving in between, projects, but they'll be divvied up amongst our group.
So you've considered this and you've got it under control?
Yes, sir, we got it under
That's all
control.
I'm asking is
Yes, sir, we got it under control.
make sure you're looking at it.
You asked a really good question, or make a really good point there. So, one of the things that we've been talking about is a lot of this work isn't just 9 to 5 or whatever, 8 to 5 for us, but is weekend, things like that. How do we, I have to pay my guys overtime to the commission. I have to authorize overtime if they want to work weekends or the contractor's doing more and it's running through the night or anything like that. So, we're trying to figure out how to, do we include that as, hey contractor, if you need us after hours, outside of business hours, whatever, we have a flat rate or something, if capital projects maybe is one thing, we still have to find a way to fund that oversight.
Well, would you not, let me make sure I understand. If the contractor wants to work overtime to meet the schedule, that's on him, right?
Correct.
You have to ask, as part of the contract, you have to get approval from us for after hours or weekend work, because we do have to schedule folks to be there while they're there.
Okay, but wouldn't a change order be cut in which he would pay us for those people that we have to put on overtime?
That certainly could happen, yes, sir.
I mean, have we ever done it that way?
We've absorbed the cost today. I don't think we've ever done that. And this would be one thing possibly, I don't know, you could put it as we'll just in the contract for every hour we work overtime, it's requested, that they work overtime, they request from us. As we wouldn't necessarily need to have that full amount of time covered with our inspection services, but if they're working through the night, it'd be nice to have an inspector approve it and have them go out there for a couple hours, at least.
Well,
Be able to
okay,
build that time.
we're helping him by providing staff to avoid liquidated damages, correct?
You argue, right?
So I don't think we'd not be part of the contracting process, but any change order.
Certainly.
would
If there's a
have that.
change order, that would have to be considered, yes, sir.
I think you can have an administrative process to
Right.
manage through that. The contractors, to Commissioner Elliott's point is, they execute during our normal business hours, and if they're working at night, holidays, and weekends, that's a premium on our staff, and y'all just handle that through a process that we probably already have there, available to, that we either get a credit back on something, or they stroke a check.
Definitely. I want to make sure we got it black and white and whatever, we get signed. So that's one thing we maybe add, to help with that manpower situation.
Vacations are all scheduled and out of this phase?
There is nothing more fun than watching water and sewer pipe go in the ground, so I can't imagine anybody wants to take a
People gonna be
vacation.
busy, trucks are all
Exactly.
maintained and ready to
Yes,
go.
absolutely.
Everything's- How soon do you expect to see in engineering more bars occurring up here?
Well, if we can, at the Finance Committee today, get our capital plan approved, and tomorrow at the commission have capital plan approved, we'll add some more to that list for you.
It's a big plan over here.
Yes. Yes,
So there'll be some more bars
right.
underneath here.
This is more of the capital and major O&M program work for the rest of the year.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. The hope is there's just a continuous set of bars on that, and we don't ever want to not have work going on, so.
These just kind of start, so
Right, that's
see
the,
things out here.
right, those are our major capital projects that are outbid, and this is the program that we do every year. Things may change. You know, we've got so many thousand people.
I guess this, well, it's not gonna be at 3 o'clock. We'll be doing that during the facility finance meeting.
I think we'll be doing it during finance today, yes, sir. I believe that was scheduled prior to the changing of the times, and maybe we didn't get that communicated to him.
Or we can
There's
just
no way
make
we-
an
no way
agenda
we can
change.
Start the finance meeting early. We'll adjourn the facilities meeting anyway.